So, welcome back to Learn Astrology with Mary. My name's Mary English. You can find me at www.maryenglish.com, maryenglish.co.uk. And today on Learn Astrology with Mary, we have a lovely guest. So, I'd like you to say hello to Giorgia Pecora. And she's a professional astrologer. And she, at the moment, where are you based at the moment?
I just moved to Barcelona. I just moved to Spain.
Whoa, okay. But you've been living in the UK for a while, yes?
Yeah, I've been living in the UK literally, till just
Uh,
some months ago. But I didn't resist the cold. So I'm just going back south. Yeah.
sure. And were you living somewhere near Glastonbury? Is that right?
Yeah, I was living in Glastonbury, like literally next to the high street in the middle of all the magic and the mist of Avalon.
Well, Glastonbury is a very magical place. If you've never been there, there's a lot that goes on, and there's a lot on the mystical side of things. So take me a little bit back in time, if you wouldn't mind. So how did you first get into astrology? What even sparked an interest in you? And what age were you when you found out what sign of the zodiac you're? Because you're an Aquarius. When did you discover that?
I discovered that when I think I was 12. I always had this weird obsession, now I work with past lives and I kind of making more sense of it. But I always had this interest. I used to talk about this with my sister at the beginning of the internet back then. I feel I'm getting older, like back then when the internet started. There was this online Italian website in which you can calculate your natal chart. So the first time I look at my own chart, I was 14, and that
Okay.
was quite an experience because now we got all these resources like what you're offering. We have all these books, but back then there was not much, and especially with some placements in astrology, we tend to use a language that is a bit like scary. I got lots of 12 house placements. We know that the 12th house has to do with many things, spirituality, but also self-undoing or prison. So the first time I read like this kind of online automatic report, it was a bit challenging, I have to
Well,
say.
yeah, it'd be a bit scary. But when did you find out that you were an Aquarius? So you would have found that out before you found out about natal astrology. What age were you? About 12, you said, yeah?
Well, yeah, yeah.
Uh-huh. And so that you knew that. So how had you discovered that? So had you read that in a magazine or seen that in a book?
There was something that it was connected to my relatives because, like, in my auntie place, there was these puzzles that were kind of in Italy during 90s. These Art Nouveau ones,
Hmm.
and one about Sagittarius and another one about Capricorn. Everyone has strong Sagittarius placements in my family, and I always get intrigued by that. It's like, oh, that's interesting. What's that? So then my auntie will explain these things about astrology. She was like, yeah, for example, you are an Aquarian, so this is something that that came from my relatives.
Yeah, that's the thing. I did have, and she's passed years ago because I'm in my 60s now, but I had an auntie who was into astrology, and she was very into astrology. She had ephemeris, the whole thing. She made charts, she did the thing. And I didn't know a lot about astrology, but she did. And I only sort of started learning about it in my early teens, and I completely misheard what she said to me one day. She said that I thought she'd said that I had because I'm a sun sign Pisces, and I thought she said that my chart, my ascendant, and I thought she'd said my first house was Gemini. She didn't say that at all. She said my moon was in Gemini. I'd completely misheard her. And for years, I said to people, I'm a first house Gemini Pisces. And I didn't even know what that meant, but it was completely wrong, completely wrong, completely wrong. But I didn't even know what that meant. I'm a Pisces with first house Gemini, and because that's something she told me and I'd misheard her. But it's interesting that you had a relative as well that explained even what signs of the zodiac were. And then how else did you explore it? So between the ages of 12 and 14, what else went on?
It was the internet, because like even if my relatives had some connections, and later on I discovered there was more to that. I was just reading online. I was like into Eastern philosophy since I was very, very young. I had very specific interests, and I was obsessed by reading. And I just was reading all these online resources. And there was this show with this astrologer, an Aquarian Gemini rising, that every month we do, no, every week we do like this ranking. for
Hmm.
zodiac sign, but it was very nice because also would explain some things about the planets. For example, like this week is a bit difficult for Aquarius, is in the 11th, like in the terms of ranking, is in the last position because Saturn is making a square, something like that. So there was something in the language that was just getting more and more. I used to watch this with my sister, and to the point in which my parents gave me, like for Christmas, there was this kind of yearly astrological, book,
Okay.
um, describing like Aquarius month by month, your relationship like to love, luck, and career. So it was TV and the internet mostly, because also friends around, like I grew up, I'm Sicilian, I grew up in Sicily.
Hmm.
It was not really a topic um, back then. Yeah.
Yeah, well, see, my parents were Catholic, so there wasn't going to be a lot of discussion about signs of the zodiac. But my auntie, who also was a Catholic, but I don't even know how she got into astrology. I have no idea. I'd have to ask one of my siblings, but she was very, very into it. But yeah, my investigative astrology was much, much later on. So yours was quite early. Cool. And then what led you up then to now? So, okay, it's a big leap now. You're sort of 14, learning about it. Now you're a professional astrologer. So talk me through what happened in between. How did you get to where you are now? Tell me the history.
So I wanted, I think my dream to become an astrologer started when I was probably 15. Like I was just obsessed with that. But it's not this romantic story that you go to your Catholic Sicilian parents and you tell them, I want to be an astrologer. And my parents are like, it's not a profession. So I just went like to uni. I've been spending like many years on the academia. I taught Italian for many years. And I had this crisis. I moved to Berlin when I was 24,
Hmm.
and I just found this meetup group, like this community, because I just moved there. It was like I want to meet new people. I love to be part of groups. I'm much of a cliche and Aquarian. I love to be part of like circles, like long-term things, co-creations. And I found this astrology cafe that
Hmm.
just opened up literally the day I moved. So I was
Oh,
like,
wow.
okay, I'm kind of interested to find like-minded people, and I went there, and that was it. That was just the beginning of the end, let's say, because there
Hmm.
was a professional astrologer, this amazing woman, and I was just looking at charts. We were talking astrology for 1 hour and a half, like once a week, and then I will ask her, like, should you just give me books over
Hmm.
books? She was like, you got it. You got this thing. Like you got so much passion. Or I would see things in the chart, and she would be like, where do you see this? And I'm like, it's in there. And I see this now because I'm a mentor for people that want to become professional astrologers. There is this felt sense, when you're teaching, you feel it. Sometimes there are these people, it's like, wow, this is just the goddess of astrology is calling you. So
Hmm.
now I look back, I look at her because she was like, since I saw you looking at the charts, I knew it. I knew that you were an astrologer. And then I just got so passionate, and I was just reading charts of friends for a couple of years. I attended like schools, I got certificates. And in 2017, I opened my school
Hmm.
officially because I was part of this Astro Cafe, but I was explaining things to other people because
And
I'm a
this is
back.
still in Germany. It's in Berlin,
This
yes?
was in Germany. Yeah, this was in Berlin. It was like live before whatever happened in the last years.
Hmm.
Um, and then I just started teaching because the group asked me, because we were, in the Astro Cafe, we were just looking at charts, and they were like, we would like to know more. We don't know where to go. I am very good at explaining things. So I was like, okay. So the first group was very informal. It was like a foundation, a basic course. I was like, oh wow, okay, I'm finally teaching what I want to teach. And that was it. And during my Saturn return, I officially registered my business as like I registered the school in Germany. I got
Oh,
Saturn in the 10th house in my system. And
yeah,
that
yeah.
was like, that was it. I was like, okay, you want to do this full time, then you have to leave your previous life behind. And that's what I did.
Whoa, okay. So that's quite a big leap then. So what were you doing for a living before you became astrologer? What would you say was your profession before then?
I was a teacher, and then I did educator. So I used to teach primary school, mid school, high school, adults. So I have a master's degree in intercultural relationships and Italian as a second language. So I was working like with people at borders. I lived in Ukraine, then I lived in Germany, then I moved to Portugal. So it's been like lots of moving around.
Well, is that
Um,
got anything to do with your Mars conjuncture MC in Sagittarius?
is that my Mars? I love my Mars. Sometimes it puts me on trouble. I have to be honest with you. That's the part of my chart I love the most. But sometimes, yeah, right now I'm in Mexico.
Mm.
Like we're talking, I just relocated from England. I live in Spain. I just found this new flat, and then I'm like, okay, let's go to Mexico. But yeah, I think in this lifetime there is lots of exploration. Yeah, that
Yeah.
comes from physical movement,
Mm.
and also like like when we look at the planet, right? We got these different levels of expression of it.
Mm.
And with Mars in Sagittarius, I feel all the different expressions are very much consciously embraced. Yeah.
Yes, but you've got that nice thing because you've got your Jupiter in Aries and your Mars in Sagittarius. So you've got co-rulers the other way around. So they're going to have a relationship, aren't they? Mm.
A very nice motor reception. I like that.
Yeah. And okay, so Germany's a little bit more forgiving of astrology than the UK. Now, you have lived in the UK and you've been here for a while. Now, I've lived here all my life, apart from a couple of years in Switzerland where I went to school. Can't you tell? No. My dad got a refund. Joke. And the thing about UK is astrology isn't as big as it might be in other countries, especially America. Yeah. How did you cope with the astrology in the UK?
It's so interesting because I have such a different perspective on that. I'm from Sicily, I'm from the south of Italy, and astrology, no, is not welcomed, is not taken seriously. I don't have many Southern Italian clients also because like people don't want to spend money on that. Like they don't see something they should spend money for.
Mhm.
Um, so I didn't, had this conversation before with British people, but when I think about Europe, I feel that actually England is the center of astrology. We think we have the astrological conference every year. Most of the astrologers that I know, just like all the writers are in England. Uh, so I really don't feel that. It's just from the outside. Like when I moved to England, and also my ex-partner is an astrologer as well. Um, there was this feeling of, okay, I'm finally in a country in which astrology is welcomed. And I mean, I was also in Glastonbury, I have to say, as you
Yeah,
said,
it's going to be a lot more welcome there.
yeah,
Yeah. Mhm.
Glastonbury is very welcoming of all of this. You would talk to anyone on the streets, everyone knows the sun sign, where the Mars or Jupiter is, if they're having a Uranus transit. So there's also probably because of that I
Mhm.
had an opinion on that.
Okay. Because most British people do know what sign of the zodiac they are, for sure. I mean, they might get it a bit wrong and then go, I was born on a cusp, and then they'll get me into an argument because I'm always telling them there's no such thing as a cusp. You're either one side of the zodiac or another. Yeah. Um, okay, so you're in Berlin, you're into an astrology cafe. Cool. Okay. And then there's a lady there that gives you all her books and helps. And then because you've got the teaching qualification, then you're teaching other people. I mean, that's very true, though. When you're learning a subject, the best way to learn it is to then teach it to someone else. Because if you don't know enough about it to be able to teach it, then you don't know the subject. Yeah. Oh, cool. Now, going back to your sun sign being in the 12th house. Yeah. So when you read an old astrology book, they will give you this list of things. Yeah, it's depressing. How was it when you first read all of that?
When I read that, it was a bit traumatic, to be honest with you, Mary. It was this thing of like, oh, there is the risk you end up in prison. You're gonna have a quite lonely life. People will understand you. You have this feeling of not belonging. But oh my
Mhm.
God. And then there was this other thing though about esoteric studies and astrology and magic that was always so present in my life. So I was like, oh, okay, this makes sense. Even I was reading astrology book when I was
Mm.
that young. But in general, yeah, like I feel like all books probably until 25, 30 years ago are quite 8th house, 12th house, the karmic houses in general. So we talk about karmic houses, we talk
Mm.
about 4, 8,
Mhm.
and 12. They have a bit of a difficult reputation to deal with.
Yeah,
But
well, water houses as well. Water signs the most misunderstood, but yeah.
but I have a very different opinion on that. I work mostly with karmic and evolutionary astrology, astrogenealogy, so it's all past life stuff.
Mhm.
And also that sun in the 12th house helps me to do the work that I do. So
It's a plus point now that you know that it's not a negative thing. It
yeah,
does annoy me when people have read the negative interpretation of something astrological, either because they've read it on the internet or they've read an old book written by some bloke, but don't get me started.
don't let me start it. Then we can really well, yeah.
Okay, you're in Berlin. Okay, so what happened after that?
After that, what happened after that? Then it was 2020. I met another astrologer actually in England for a retreat. Then we started our relationship. I wanted to leave Germany. So we went for a trip to Portugal and we stayed there because there were even no flights. Also, Saturn was on my sun. It was very interesting constellation of things. And so we lived for 1 year in Portugal and I moved my business online.
Mhm.
I was very reticent at first. It was very interesting because people have been asking that over the years because I have lots of clients from the US. I have a big
Mhm.
American based clients group.
So were you
But
mostly doing your readings face to face up until that point?
yeah, everything. Yeah. I
Oh,
was doing
wow.
tons of it was just live readings. I was barely doing anything online. I was barely doing anything on social media, but in Berlin, I was so present. I was very much socially, I was part of different groups. I was doing lots of cooperations. So I didn't feel the need to move offline. But
Mm.
after 2020, with Jupiter entering Aquarius, and so opening up to this online education on a bigger scale, then I realized that because I love online stuff, I love graphic design, everything, nothing was working. So I had these massive groups because of course everyone was home and there was their chance to learn some astrology. So everything just moved online. And since then, probably in the last 4 years, I've done 5 live readings. I'm not doing any live reading anymore.
Oh,
It's been
yeah, I've stopped face to face during the pandemic because my husband's got a heart issue, and I was sort of sheltering him, whatever the expression is. I didn't want him to catch anything, so I've kept it as being online. But I was very much online anyway before the pandemic, and then it's just stayed online. So I didn't have an issue with that. But it's interesting how now, I mean, I'm talking to you now, and you're in Mexico. Is that right?
right now, on holiday,
Yes,
yeah.
exactly. So, we couldn't have done this in the 1980s. It would have been impossible. It's amazing how in a short space of time that we can now discuss with someone and video, whatever, in a totally different country.
Right.
And I
Yeah.
think that's benefited astrology, actually. It's opened up the doors to people to be able to understand it. And now I don't know what's going to happen now that Pluto's gone into Aquarius. Maybe that'll help a little bit more. Everybody's talking about AI quite a lot, but we'll come on to all of that in a minute. But for yourself, okay, so how do you cope with having a moon in Pisces?
In life,
Hmm.
it's a first house moon, so it's even more prominent. It's been a ride. It's been a bit of a ride. I'm very much welcoming my art in my work. Discovering shamanic work was very helpful. Doing all spiritual things, very helpful. Taking time, on my own, even on a very practical level. When I live with people, I need to have my own room to do my own things. I need these moments of isolation. Also, being a 12th house person is just enriching that element, and just trying to dive into this constant emotional streams of consciousness and make something tangible out of it. Some graphics, some writing, some visualizations. I've always had this strong creativity, but never, I felt like people are like that. I was like, this is what people do, and actually it's not. So, and just trying to channel all the feelings.
Mm.
It's a bit exhausting at times, Mary. I have to
Yeah,
be.
and have you read The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, go back and read it again when you get stuck. I mean, she is a sun sign Pisces. I can't remember her moon sign. I think it might be Capricorn, but she is a sun sign Pisces. And the thing with moon and Pisces, but you've got your Venus very near to your moon. They're conjunct.
As well.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But again, that's going to make you very sensitive to other people's feelings, which a sun sign Aquarius is not quite so much. They'll be empathic of it, but they won't take on other people's feelings. I mean, I'm an expert in Aquarius, by the way. My mother was an Aquarius. I have two siblings at Aquarius. My auntie, not the one that I was talking about, but another auntie was an Aquarius. I've been surrounded by Aquarians all my life, and I completely understand them. And I love Aquarius because they're weird and wacky and wonderful and different. And freedom loving, and then you've got this sort of, because I'm a sun sign Pisces with Venus and Mars in Aquarius, but you've got your moon and Venus in Pisces, and so and Venus is quite high in your chart, so it's what is the first planet that we come across just after your ascendant, so you're going to have that whole sort of emotional thing, but there's and then your sun signs in the 12th as well. So there's quite a lot of signature of Pisces in your chart. But obviously you're in the right job by being an Aquarius, if that isn't weird and wonderful and a Piscean type. And because the two signs of the zodiac that are most involved in astrology is Aquarius and Pisces, just as signs, and probably Scorpio as well. They're probably the three signs of the zodiac. The majority of my clients that I get are of those three signs. Probably late at night is a Scorpio is more likely to contact me. And you've got a one-sided chart, so you've got a bowl, and you've got Uranus and Neptune conjunct. Have you heard of indigos?
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting for what you're saying. Sometimes I wonder, like, when you have, in general, with two signs, like in the chart, we're having like lots of Aquarius and Pisces, or maybe lots of Aries and Taurus, because the signs one after each other are naturally incompatible, right? So the way in which I love to look at that is from a more multidimensional perspective. Like sometimes I feel there are like these two different people in me. I'm realizing how sensitive I am, also with the Mars in Sagittarius, because you see, I really love that part of my chart, but it's a bit distractive of the rest. With the conjunction of like we call Saturn and Uranus together was 88. I got lots of clients from the same year as I am, but there are like this window. It's interesting generationally. There are more like the entrepreneur, visionaries. Like, I have a school and I see lots of people that were born just a couple of weeks after me. We all have our own big project.
Right.
Our school, our group, our community, whatever that is. Yeah. So I think I'm in the right field, Mary. I think so.
Say that again, you think?
I think I'm in the right field. If you ask me, it's like I can't imagine myself like, working in an office, just sending emails like, oh no.
I haven't worked at in a regular job since the 1990s. Yeah. I did try it once. We've got a hotel next door to where we live, and I had a particularly quiet week, and they had a sign outside saying they needed somebody to work in there. I thought, oh wow, maybe I could do a few hours a week. So I went in, I was in the hotel, and I was there for half an hour, 30 minutes. A family came in with lots of suitcases and needed to check in, and I helped them carry the suitcases up 2 flights of flipping stairs. The place didn't have a lift. I got back downstairs and I thought, what am I doing? What am I doing in here? What am I doing? I walked straight out and I'd sent them an email. I said, really sorry, I can't do this, but I managed 30 minutes of a regular job. I mean, I've been out of regular work for so long now, I don't think I could probably do it because I choose my own hours. But it is the subject, it's astrology that keeps me going. Okay, so I personally, if I was going to make a diagnosis, I'd say you were definitely an indigo. Your second generation indigos. Indigos started being born in the 1970s. They've got the one-sided chart. They've got the Uranus-Neptune conjunction. You've got Saturn in the mix as well. So that makes you slightly more serious about your generation rather than the others that have got it later on that don't have Saturn in that sign. And the big thing for that generation is that they want to have a life purpose, not just a job. Would you say that was something you identify with as well?
Oh yeah, yeah. Like it feels, it feels like a path of devotion. That's probably would be the word for it. It's just like there is this sort of, every time, for example, if being in a relationship, it was like this is gonna be a threesome, me, you, and my work. Because it's not the work itself, it's a practice. It's for me, the way in which I perceive astrology, doing modern astrology, karmic astrology, is just this daily embodiment, this daily observation of how things are. So it's just, yeah, it's quite a path for sure. And I see it's just like that's part of like of a bigger call. And yeah.
Okay, and so can you explain to my listeners what karmic astrology is?
Yeah. So when we talk about karmic astrology from a Western perspective, because also we got like the Eastern one that is very different, like in its own system. There's also the interesting thing, we got like more than probably 50, 60 types of astrology. The karmic I work with is like, it's a mix of different things. So we got evolutionary astrology. The idea is that we can look at previous incarnations and see how they are influencing our present lifetime. So the question is, what can we do about it? It's like, it's about seeing if in a previous lifetime you were Cleopatra or something. It's not about that. It's more about the energy that we're carrying with us, because we tend to repeat a certain loop until we're not conscious of it. Maybe we're coming like a previous lifetime, you were a prisoner. So you are carrying with you in your DNA this feeling of being in a prison. So this is what I'm interested in. And there may be some dynamic in this lifetime in which you kind of feel constricted, you didn't know what to do. And with a karmic astrology like analysis, you could see how to overcome that, like how to break this pattern. The same has to do with our entanglement with our families or lovers or co-workers, because we got karmic people, but also we got dharmic people. This is something we don't talk much about. We got people that come our way to help us and to give us some hints about which direction to go next. So that's what we do. We contemplate the past to work on a better present and the future. Because this is what is interesting with astrology. Maybe you notice the same people are so focused on what's going to happen next, but if we don't have the context of the past, also with transits, like when we look at future planetary movements, we always have to look in the perspective of what happened the last time that maybe the planet touched something, or maybe we have a Saturn return. Then 7 years later, we're going to have a Saturn square, but it's important to know what happened during the Saturn return in order to give context to what's happening with the Saturn square. So there is always this looking back at the past, despite people think we work with the future. Yeah.
Oh, I hear what you say. I don't really think astrology is too much about the future anyway. I mean, it might be because I'm a mutable flipping sign. The mutable signs live in the past, the fixed live in the present, and the cardinals live in the future. And I have got all of those in my chart. It's just that until we resolve what might have happened to us, we're going to be burdened by it. I mean, in astrology, we can look at North Node, South Node. So those will give us some indicators and stuff. We can take into account things like Chiron, where were we wounded, etc. But how else does a karmic astrology determine the past lives from the chart? Is it the planets that you're looking at, or the angles, or how is it worked out?
So there are different elements. So we look at Saturn, of course, as the Lord of Karma. We look at Chiron, as you just mentioned. When we're looking at the nodes, I think one of the things that we tend to forget is to really dig deeper in the meaning of the nodes. So we got this thing that is called planets at the bending of the nodes. So if there is a planet between the south node and the north node, so it's automatically making a square with both nodes. This is a very relevant planet. Like there is some sort of pit stop that we need to do in order to go to the other side. So we can imagine the south node as this initial point, this planet as like the second part of like this path, let's say, and going through that, we can go towards the mission, our north node, but also, for example, looking at the rulers of our node. What is a ruler? Like, is the planet responsible for a sign? Let's say we're having a south node in Libra, so we want to look where Venus is located to have more details about in which way we are connected with the past. What is the condition of this Venus? Because sometimes we come from incarnations that were quite easy. Sometimes we come from memories that are a bit more complex. Like, we are not all starting from the same point. Then we want to look at retrogrades. If there are retrograde planets in the chart, how they're behaving, how they're influencing us. Then we want to look at interceptions. Interceptions is like, oh, in your system, there's no interception when we look at equal houses or signs. I work with Placidus and Porphyry. So sometimes it might happen that some of you may notice that a house is not connected to a sign, it's not connected to anything. And this is in karmic astrology what we consider a karmic signature, and we consider interception. So the idea is that there is some file that is missing there, like there is some lesson that is being blocked for some reason that we need to get back. Like, we are acting in a way that is not really much aligned with us. Then we work with Pluto. So Pluto as in the sense of like the expression of the soul. So, and the sun, the ego in this lifetime. So we take all these data, we put them together, and then, yeah, we have a karmic profile for just the, when we work with relationship, karmic astrology, there are, of course, other things we need to take into account.
Yes, because it was Judy Hall who was very interested in karmic astrology and past lives. She lived not in Glastonbury, but that end of the world. And I've met her a couple of times, and I went to one or two of her talks that she gave. She was very much into karmic astrology. And she wrote a lovely book called Hands Across Time, which is all about past lives. She was very much into past life astrology. I mean, I'm into past lives because I'm a hypnotherapist. So I get people to act their past lives out. So they're in a state of deep relaxation and they'll experience their past lives. And I had that that's the wrong word. I had that as an experience myself when I was at college in London. I went to Davis's College, and there was a guy in our year at the college who the first time he got us all to lie on the floor and he talked us through it and how to do it. It was amazing. And so I learned how to do it from him, and then I was professionally trained to how to do that with clients. And it's quite amazing what people's memories are, and they're very clear for them. You know, I can see myself here, I'm doing this, I'm in this village, I've got this for breakfast, I'm gonna have to get married, I'm gonna get killed, I'm gonna die, whatever, and then come back. And you sort of, then they'll come round afterwards and they'll say, that's amazing, you know, where did all of that come from? And I don't know, it came from you, it's within you. But I've never used it within a chart. I'll look to see where the transits are for the moment, but I don't know how to do those types of readings. I haven't studied it. That there was a book a long time ago, and I can't remember the name of the astrology, but he wrote a book about Pluto, and I'm sure he started a school, but he was in the army or something.
It's Jeffrey, I think you're talking about.
That's right. That was a long time ago, and I did read that book, and that was karmic astrology. And then you got Stephen Forrest, I think, also is a.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was the two of them. So you go like Jeff Green, and then you go Stephen Forrest. They started together. This thing is called evolutionary astrology, and then they kind of, there was a bit, they split up. There are like two like sides to that. I'm on the, let's say, more Jeff Green side because I studied at the Pluto School of Astrology. There are several books I do courses on karmic astrology. There are several books that are picking some things up there. Also more modern, there is Mark Jones. I mean, he defines it like transformational astrology, but the base is evolutionary astrology as well. It does great work with that. I'm writing a book right now about karmic astrology because of that. It's happening. That's why I'm here. Because I see there are all these bits, and then I'm like, okay, can we write something about it? Because also, like the book you were mentioning before by Judy, like there are different things, but I studied shamanic work. Mostly I'm a shamanic practitioner. Like even before being an astrologer, that's probably my thing.
Mm.
um, and with Akashic records, like I love hypnotherapy, past life regressions. I'm extreme fan of that. Do it, go for it. It's amazing. And I just noticed putting several systems together is like how deep and also precise that could be, because like when you go to like an hypnotherapy session and you explore past lives, because it's the same question probably you can relate to. People like, yeah, looking at that, what's going to change? But it
Mm.
gives you so much perspective
Mm.
about your life right now in this lifetime.
Mm.
There is something like is more probably in the energetics of that, because maybe those people are coming, I don't know, with an issue with relating, and then you realize in these past lives you've been cheating on over and over
Yes.
again,
Mm.
or so there is something that just in a very 12th house Piscean way just makes its own sense. And that's what I see with karmic astrology. When I describe certain dynamics that I see,
Mm.
because that's part of the Piscean, sometimes I see things in chart. I'm probably not reading the chart, like it's more the psychic part of me. Um, but people know what we're talking about. There is
Mm.
something that awakens in them, that there is some sense making that I always find extremely magical, because logically doesn't make any sense, let's say, but does it even matter in this hyper rational society that we have to make sense of everything in a certain way?
Well, it's not even
Yeah.
about making sense. Sometimes it's about how does something feel? Does that
Yeah.
feel light or does it feel heavy? Does that make us feel better? Does that make us feel worse? I mean, you are Pluto in Scorpio generation. I'm Pluto in Virgo. Pluto in Scorpio wants to get to the depths of whatever it is. I'm going to dance around the surface of it. I'm not going to be going as deep as yourself. I mean, I'm not saying that I can't go to those depths. And I think the past life thing is even people that don't believe in past lives, when they've had an experience of a past life session, or someone explores their chart like you would be able to do and say, have you ever had a problem with this and that and the other? And they go, well, yes, I have. And I don't know why that is. The thing about, because in a past life session, you're experiencing the life, and then I ask my clients to then come back to themselves whilst they're still in this session. What advice would your today self give to this person, and then vice versa? So the past life person is now advising the 2024 person. That's extremely powerful, because they don't want to have to go through those same difficulties. I mean, I use the word karma is sort of implies that it's some sort of thing you did wrong. I don't quite see it like that. Karma
Yeah.
is a learning. Yeah, so we don't want to it's not even about making mistakes. It's how can we make this life more easy for ourselves. Yeah. And I think that's a wonderful skill to be able to share with people. Your clients must be very happy.
Uh, from what they're saying, I suppose so. Like the thing is, I really love my work, and I get very nice feedback from people. I have so many returning clients. So either they're all delusional, and that's a possibility, or it's like, just being Piscean together, or actually it works. Just like I've been seeing so many synchronicities and things happening over the years that I'm like, you can't make all this up. It's just there is something that is just, yeah,
And
people find it very beneficial.
it is, and it's sometimes quite difficult to explain to someone how that works. Why does this image on this chart that we've created, how can that relate to anything that's happening in your life? And they're having Saturn going past the sun sign. Oh, is there any difficulties about, I'm having a dreadful time with this, that, and the other, um, or you're born with a certain thing in your chart, a certain aspect or placement or whatever, and you can ask the person, how are things to do with la la la, which would be a trigger for them to tell you more about something. I mean, personally, I think astrology is the doorway to our conscious, subconscious, whatever you want to call it, to our life purpose. Personally, I think astrology opens doors to a wonderful world of enrichment rather than disappointment. Yeah, me personally, I think it's terribly powerful, and I love that. And you never stop learning because learning something new. Okay, so it's powerful work that you're doing. Deep respect to your experience and your take on things. And so, when you're working with your clients, do you do long sessions, short sessions? I do a maximum of 90 minutes. That's the longest session I do. What do you do generally with your clients?
I do an initial session of 90 minutes. So I do like foundation psychological readings, and I always suggest to go with that one first.
Mhm.
So I always keep the karmic one like as a second one, because like energetically it really goes deep. Also depends from the intention of the person, because like with the psychological one, you're more dealing like with the present, like what it could be a good partner for you, or like in terms of career. And then if they're open enough and resourced enough, we go into a karmic session that is also 90 minutes long, usually. Yeah, I
Mhm.
used to do, when I was based in Berlin, shamanic work with that, because I study astro shamanism with Franco Santoro. So you could do some shamanic interventions on the client, because there are like some things we can talk about, but there are some other things that words can't really reach at times as well.
Mm.
There used to be another options, but now we still like in this, for me, is to suggest some practices or embodied practices that people could do in order to work with that. Because as you
Mhm.
said, we have to get out of this thing, like why this happened to me, why my life is like that. It's just like things are the way they are. What is the best we could do considering the conditions you are living right now? Yeah.
Mm. Cool.
More than
Okay.
yeah.
And tell me which astrologer, so back now when you're learning and whatever, which astrologer had the most impact for you? Or would you say,
Jeff Green for sure. Jeff Green, like hands down. Like I got this Pluto book that it got to me by accident by one of my ex-partners who was like, you saw this book, and it gave me this book. And also the first teacher I was mentioning you about, she gave me the same book the same week. So I had these 2 copies of this one book on my table. I was like, oh, that's interesting. And it's written in a way, I have to say, it's not really easy to read.
it's not
And
an easy read? No.
at all. Like it's quite, because it channeled that. Also, Jack Green has a moon in Pisces, so it was a proper work of channeling. But when I read that, it just changed everything, and that's why I started studying at the school, the Pluto School of Astrology.
Mhm.
And it's so deep. It's very heavy. It's so deep, metaphysical, because I studied theosophy, metaphysics. These are the topics that interest me. Like he has this depth that I just could relate to. So also works with chakra. It's challenging. It's one of these things that you're reading and not fluff. You sit with it, and it was really, really a process to go into his
Mm.
model. But it's not an easy read, but it's very contemplative. And after that, I've been reading a lot. I'm one of these nerds, but nothing has the same impact, I would say.
Wow. Okay. My first book was Linda Goodman, and it was a fluffy book. It was sun signs, and then I read love signs, and then I read star signs. Um, but I didn't get into astrology until my homeopath. Because I'm trained as a homeopath, and I went to see my homeopath, and we had a discussion. She said, "Oh, that must have happened during your Saturn return." I thought, whatever that bloody hell's what's a Saturn return? What's she talking about? So I came home and investigated and got some books on it, and then I got a computer program, which cost me £10. I can't believe how cheap it was. But anyway, this is 1990s, and
Oh wow.
it's the fact that she said this Saturn return. What's this Saturn return? What's that all about? And as it turned out, what she was talking about wasn't my Saturn return. Okay, so the issue that we got, I wasn't having a Saturn return then. I was having Saturn on my sun sign. Okay, so she
Oh,
wasn't an astrologer, but it was just this question. It's like, what was the Saturn return? What's that all mean? Um, but yeah, but it's so it wasn't really one person that influenced me or one particular book. It was a sort of a gradual process, really. Um, and it was mostly preempted by indigos and one-sided charts and people born in the 1990s because of their one-sided charts. And it was to do with my son because he had a one-sided chart, and his friends at school all had these one-sided charts, and I started investigating it, and that got me deeper into astrology. And I did a whole year's worth of research, and I wrote a book about it. So that was my beginning into astrology. So tell me, this book that you're writing or you want to write, so tell me more about this.
Yeah, so I just like that's why I'm in Mexico now. Like I took this 2 weeks of like off, and I'm on the mountains, enjoying my time with my friends. Is about past life. I don't think I want to call it karmic astrology exactly for the reason why that the thing you were saying. When we're talking about karma, there is naturally this kind of heavy negative connotation that I'm not interested in. So I'm thinking about, and also I'm working with a method that is not there yet. So I think I have to come up with a different name that is just boiling. But the idea is to create like some sort of manual in which I describe, let's say you were like, I want to work with a chart from an astrological, like karmic standpoint. I don't know where to start. That's the book. It's going to be a bit dense, like it's going to be 10 chapters with all these things I was mentioning you before, like how do we define a chart karmically? And also I want to add some personal experiences that people had in their lives, because I feel that, I teach, like I always work with groups. I have these live courses, and there is nothing more powerful of listening to each other's real life stories. So, talking about Saturn, also want to bring a couple of examples of maybe people going through big Saturn transitions in their life. What happened? How that felt before and after. So it's like how they're processing their own karma. So that's the idea.
And have you written already? Have you
No, this
written
is
any
my
books?
first.
This will be your first. Oh, this is your
I
first
do,
baby. Oh,
yeah,
bless.
yeah. I do lots of writing, and that's the problem. I'm just like, it got to a point in which my students are getting a bit aggressive. But like you have to write the thing. Like it's because with the courses I write, like I do these newsletters that people love. I just write this long piece for the new one and the full. They're for free, so if some of you are interested, please go for it. And writing is my joy. First of all, like I'm a teacher, but I'm a writer. But now it's 8 years I'm in. I have to sit. I feel my brain go to a point in which I have to release this information because there's no other space left.
Yeah.
Things, so.
Yeah, the artist's way, read that once again, it'll help you to be able to finish it. I mean, my first book took me 2 years to write, and I wrote one for each sign of the zodiac. And by the time I got to the 12th book, they were taking me 2 months to write, not 2 years, because I'd sort of got into the format of how the book was written. But it's important that, I'm going to just give a teeny bit of advice. It's important that you write your book from your perspective. Don't think too much about who's going to read it. Obviously, you want it to be understandable, but it has to be from you. It has to be Giorgia. It has to be your experience of it, because that's what people will be drawn to, because then you'll be attracting to the readers, the ones that will have had the same experiences or similar or want to achieve the same as yourself. I think there's lots of different ways of writing, and I have been writing for quite a long time, and I'm published and self-published. And I think when you write a non-fiction book, an astrology book, it's much better to have it from your perspective. That's so much more powerful, rather than trying to write something that you think people will necessarily want to.
It's just like there is something, I think there's the riot part in my Aquarian. I always had this thing, I don't like things in a certain way, so I'm just gonna do them my own way. It's the same with the book. I'm like, yeah, there are some nice things, but I would do this in this way, and I'm like, I just do it. Yeah. Say, with teaching, I'm like, yeah, we'll teach this in this way. Great, I'm just gonna have my own school. Like I'm in this. So with the book, I just feel, I know it's the Aquarian Piscean mix. You know, the side that is more the woo-woo part, because I mean we're talking past lives, but
Mm.
also with a much Aquarian, like, you know, I want to put lots of journaling questions, like lots self-reflection work. Like I don't want to do the work for people. You know, I just want to create a base from which
Yes.
people can start their own self-exploration.
Oh, well, I wish you every success with it. Let me know when the book is written, and obviously we'll be helping you promote it, because that would be lush. It's been beautiful talking with you today. Thank you very much for joining us on the podcast. Now, let us know, how can we contact you? So what, I mean, obviously I'll put those into the show notes as well, but for people that are listening audio wise or haven't got a pen or paper, so how would we get in contact with you?
My website is visionaryastrology.com. You can find my courses there. So I have a new group starting in March for beginners, and one about transits, about predictive astrology, but from a very spiritual lens, starting in March as well. And I'm very active on Instagram. So that's my main. I write lots of posts, updates, with daily transits, questions suitable for beginners as well. And again,
what's your Instagram handle?
Visionary astrology.
So
It's just
visionary, so Visionary. Is that right? Visionary?
is vision, and
Vision.
air is the element. So
Oh,
it's not
vision
vision
air. Sorry.
air.
Right.
Yeah. And there is also this newsletter that you will find in the website, on the link on Instagram. It's for free. People love it. That's the feedback I usually get. It's I'm very proud of that baby. It's always a bit of a price sit with it, and we just go into this collective analysis and conversations. So
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you very much. Now, I am going to say goodbye to you on the audio, but obviously we're going to continue to speak just a couple of minutes afterwards. But I just want to say thank you very much for being with us today.
thank you for having me.